right, so let me take a deep breath and welcome the incredible Mia Wergaft to this special edition of Brian Brake's character, How They Did It, because Mia has, I wanted to say it's a magical story of finding representation, but I also want to say like totally not magical because everyone can do it. So like it's a both. So thank you so much for being here today.
Of course. I'm so happy to be here and give some closure to this whole process. It's awesome. It's really, really awesome.
Good. I appreciate you saying that. And I love that you used the word closer because I think so many actors, when we're reaching out to representation, can actually feel like, is it ever ending? Or they can be on like an endless loop of reaching out all the time and never feeling like it ever is solved. And that loop can go for years and years and years. So before we get too deep into exactly how it unfolded for you, can you share your results with us? Like I have your exact numbers, but I think it's better to hear it coming from you.
Sure. Let's see if I can remember the numbers off the top of my head. I sent out to a little under 800 people. And I got like 65% of an open rate, which meant that 65% of those under 800 people clicked on my email and they looked at the full body of the email, which is awesome. And the fact that you taught us how to find a tracking kind of device application that helped us do that is so cool. I mean, as an actor who's just constantly blind emailing, cold emailing people, and knowing I'll never get a response, the fact that there was some sort of feedback of any kind was already a huge relief, excitement. It was awesome. And then I got like 35 people responding. That was a combination of not taking any new clients. This looks great. Let me think on it. Would love to hear more. Let's take a meeting. It was really quite a wide range, but everyone was really kind. I got a response from one person that was, we don't work with actors anymore. We work with famous chefs, but you look great. Your tapes are great. And I'm really rooting for you. So loved that one. Great one. And then I took meetings with around 11 people, 10 people, got offers from 7 of them and landed with 1.
Awesome. And there's some big news we can also share now too, right? That's the newest news. What's the newest news?
I'm going to Juilliard for grad school.
You are! This is so exciting, Mia.
Which it's funny because it has nothing to do and everything to do with agent goals.
Tell us what you mean by that. Tell us what you mean.
I was prepared to send my email, having not known that I got into school. I was ready to go. I had full faith that something would come back that was good for me and that I was excited about. The fact that I could then add into my email, hey, P.S., I got into grad school at Juilliard, was a sort of wonderful addition, but I didn't need that in order for things to go well. Secondly, in my Juilliard audition and in the process of the interviews and the many, many rounds of whatever, because of the foundational work that Agent Goals gave, I felt so good about myself in those auditions. And I know you said this wasn't a commercial for Agent Goals, but I knew I was going to say this anyways. So I just felt like I knew myself really well, which is what grad schools want to see. They want to see you, and that's what managers and agents want to see too. So I felt really prepared and really solid. My whole mindset throughout my entire audition process and Agent Goals process was, this is me, take it or leave it.
Oh, I love it.
And that was so cool.
So my next course will be how to get into Juilliard. We'll work on that another.
We'll try.
Right. So how did you relate to yourself in the business differently before this process, would you say?
Whoa, so differently. The questions that you, Brian, posed to us are questions that I think many people who have gone to acting school or acting training of some kind have been asked. It's, what kind of shows do you see yourself in? What roles do you like? What's your dream role? All these sort of quote unquote type questions. What felt different was that there was someone holding me accountable on the other side. And thank you for letting me know. there was also, I don't know, I just felt like I really wanted to find the true answer to those questions rather than the quick answer that would, be the response I could give in 2 seconds, instead of someone asking me that on the fly and me struggling and scrambling. I actually had a set list that I know where it is in my office. Like, I have the list, and that's just a really good feeling. It's very calming. So before, I related to the industry as a theater actor only, as someone who did not understand where I fit into the film and television industry, but knew that, if I was just talented enough, it would happen. It would just happen to me. Right?
I wish. I wish that was the case.
And after this, and after having many meetings with people, I can tell you, what role I could play in the middle of the night, just rolling out of bed and doing it, what I would like to do, what I would like my career to look like. The response I have gotten from every single manager I have met in my meetings has been, wow, I'm very impressed with how well you know yourself.
Mia, I want to cry. That feels so good to hear you say that.
It's been really cool. And they're like, wow, you know yourself so well. I'll hang up the meeting and be like, I don't know, who am I? But it's true. Like, I feel so much more prepared and calm because I know the information is written down somewhere, and it can change and it can adapt. But yeah, it felt really good.
It makes me so happy that you felt good about it, and it made you feel. What I'm hearing you say is, I'm relating to myself inside of the business differently, and they picked up on it. They picked up on the way that I knew myself, and also you said, like, these are questions we've probably heard before, but the way that I wrestled with them, in the way that maybe I asked you to, or something, was different enough that it was a different conversation you were having with yourself. So that wasn't. I sometimes think when actors are asked to cast themselves or understand their castability, it's like a frantic, I need to know and must have it figured out energy, which I think we removed from the heat, the crucible of that question somehow.
It's really hard. I think it's also because it's a similar game to, like, the Zodiac game. It's like, I'm such a Leo. We just want to be told who we are and what to do because life is really hard. And so I really struggled with the castability and what kind of actor I am. And I think a lot of theater actors pride themselves in their range because that is what is asked of us. And I had to really sit down for many days, many hours, wrestling with, okay, how do I pick only 3 actors that might resemble me, and it's okay if it's not all of me, that's okay. And ones, though, that I'm excited to be reminiscent of. But yeah, I think what was even more helpful was just writing down shows that I really liked, shows that I really wanted to be in. Because when you're meeting a manager, yes, you're showing your brand, but you're also trying to talk about the future. You're talking about, yeah, this is me, but what I would really like you to help me with is to reach that point over there.
Totally. And what you just said is so important, because I think a lot of times an actor is going into an agent manager meeting really with the idea of their past being what's going to get them a yes, is look at everything I've done so that you can say yes to me. Where it's like, actually, we need to talk about where you're going, because that's what we're going to do together. Your past is going to maybe verify that or not. I need to know where you are right now. So that's such a beautiful way of describing, like, these are conversations about future. Like,
I think if you're going in saying, listen, my goal is that you can join me or not. You can join me on this ride or not. I think it would be really great to have you along for the ride. I would really appreciate your help.
Yeah.
But this is what I want for myself. This is where I truly believe I can flourish and where I can go. And that confidence is not, it's not being pompous.
And I love what you're saying, because I'm sure there's actors listening that will say, like, yeah, but I'm confident. That's not going to get me mad. Like, that's not enough. Like, we're not talking about being delusional, where we're going to walk in and say, I'm meant to be series regular tomorrow because I'm this talented. It is both looking at the evidence that you have on your resume of, like, this is how far I've been able to get on my own or what I've been able to book with some of the managers I've had in the past. And so as I look forward into my crystal ball, this is where I think you had some magic here, Mia. We're calling magic, but not magic, right? The magic, but not magic, Mia, right? Where you said, here's what I see what's next for me based on where I've been so far, and that the manager can get on board. And what I like about that is the offers that you got, I'm imagining, were people who could imagine the same thing for your future, or they would not have made an offer to you.
Yeah, that was a very interesting conversation with many managers. I found out that I got into school maybe a week before I was planning on sending these emails. So I had to quickly edit and adjust my emails to put Juilliard kind of at the front rather than hide it in the back. And many of these meetings were, listen, your material's great. Awesome that you got into school. What am I going to do with you for 4 years?
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through this. How would we work together? And it took a couple of meetings to get my pitch right.
Sure, I'm sure it did. I'm sure I was like, well, I don't really know yet. Oh, let me think about this.
Yeah, so around the 5th meeting, my patter was down. Like I knew exactly what I was giving. And it was that I want someone with me long term. I want someone with me for the long haul. And I wasn't afraid to ask that. The phrase that I've kind of used for a long time in my life, and one that I will use, I think, forever, that makes me feel not pompous about my goals, kind of back to what you were saying, is my goal is to be among the best of the best. That does not mean I want an Oscar. It doesn't mean, nice, but it doesn't mean that I want a certain level of success. It means that I just want to be around people who have good integrity and good skills. And I think that's something that every artist wants. Everyone wants that. That's not something that's, delusional at all. So, yeah. The conversation about Juilliard in school was hard, but a couple of people were really into it. They were like, right. Oh no, that's a great story. Like, that's a great story for me as a manager, that you just graduated from school. I'm with you all the way. And, I see your shows, and then we hit the ground running when you graduate. I see it and I want it. So those people were where we aligned, and that was great.
Mia, what you just tapped into is they need to grab your story. They need to be able to say, I can believe in that story. And that's such a really beautiful way. And I just think that I want to make sure anyone who's listening who doesn't have the Juilliard thing to also add to their story doesn't write well, I don't have Juilliard, so this will never work for me. What you need to hear is that Mia's saying, I got them on board for a vision of what I see next for me. And that is where they got to say yes. And all the stuff you've done in your past, I just think is your way of the street cred to prove we can at least have this conversation. I've done enough training in my background and worked enough for you to know, we can have a conversation that's educated. I can be in the boardroom with you, or that's kind of what that is. And then you pitch the story, then you make the story more clear. So I love the way you're describing this. And I just want to make that clear for anyone who's listening, who's trying to say, well, yeah, but she had Juilliard. Well, like Mia said, she was ready to send before Juilliard. And I remember we had a conversation because you were concerned, should I tell them that I'm auditioning right now? And I was like, well, let's leave that out until it's booked, because then it doesn't have to add another dynamic. And then when you got the thing, I was like, let's add it. Because I remember we did kind of back end it. And then now it was okay, now we're going to add, right? And what's so important about it, I want people to just take away from this, is how you tell that story in that first email is so clearly, it's important enough that you want to wrestle over those things. You want to wrestle over, should it be there? Am I giving too much information? Am I over explaining myself? Because I need to be able to say, did I just get the trailer for me, and do I want to go see the movie?
oh my God, Brian, I put so many hours into this email. I thought night and day about it. Something that was really interesting to me, which I hope is helpful to someone out there, is that the email is sort of birthed in this course out of a deep dive into your own personal history as an artist and as a person. So for me, the beginning of my email opened with the fact that I was not born in this country, and that I moved here at a fairly young age and found theater as my sort of coming into my own. As an adult right now, I feel slightly far from that. I feel a little, that was so long ago. I have no accent. How would they, like, I was so, you know, detached from that. And I had to really remind myself that this is the trailer for me. And this is it. It's all about the story and the perspective and the perception of it. It is who I am and it's true to me. But even though I am not fully, you know, attached to that and fully like immersed in that person, that is where I came from. And that is something different about me. And that is important. It is important to kind of find your unique qualities, even if it's something that maybe you've hid, or maybe you've pushed away, or maybe you've completely dissociated from. These are the things that make you interesting and that make you unique. And so that was something I actually really struggled with for a couple of days. I almost emailed you, Brian, was like, I'm going to get rid of it. I'm going to completely get rid of it. It's not who I am anymore, but it is who I am. And it's a really interesting story. Why not?
Well, and part of what you're tapping into, me, and I think I want to make sure everyone hears this so that doesn't sound delusional, because it can't be like, I had a sad life and then I became an actor and everything was happy again. Like, that's not what you're saying. And that's also not the way to write a good email. You sound kind of cuckoo, right? But what I love about the way you're saying this is you have to give us the dignity of experiencing your story.
Yeah.
So you may be so far past whatever that thing that happened or that part of your story, but it's, if we were going to write the biography of you, or we were going to say like, here's the thing that's a little bit like, if we we're going to have the 10 bullet points of your life, like it probably would be there. And
It's there.
Maybe it does, maybe it belongs in your email, right? And that wrestle you had with it is, what I love that you say about this is, I couldn't 100% stand behind me feeling like that's who I am right now, but I understood that they needed it to understand my story.
Yeah.
So I still felt confident in presenting that because it was like a gift to them, or like a way for them to be able to have a way in to understand how I've become who I am. Right.
Yeah. And I say that also because you were talking about this sort of the story that the managers and agents want to latch onto for the future. And I would have these conversations with managers like, oh, wow, I love this story of, you know, foreign and not born here, gone to Shakespeare stuff, which is where I was after undergrad, goes to Juilliard, graduates, is working with me. Like this kind of through line that they really liked. And I was like, yeah, that's me, baby. Like, that's me. So that was really important to give. And it's definitely one of those things where you should lean into your differences and not shy away from them, which is hard. But
totally hard, because it can feel like, why should I even bother to tell them that all they care about is if I booked a co-star on Law and Order SUV?
I have never worked in film and television ever. I have never been on a set.
Right, everyone, please hear that, because there is someone listening who's going to say like, if I haven't booked this much or haven't, like, they're not going to want me.
No.
Right? And so what Mia beautifully illustrated is her vulnerability and her story outweighed her experience. Right. Yeah. And what you want is that kind of representation who's like, I am in for it. You don't want to be a fly by night. There's my agent who sucked for a while, and there's the manager who blew for a while, and this one did, like you want to be with someone who is there for the long term. That's the image that we want to have of someone.
Yeah.
You know,
and
who can be with us.
Yeah. And I felt really confident in my theater training, and I felt confident that could translate. I knew it could. And I had been told for years if I wanted to meet a manager and agent, I had to send in a reel. I hated that. I loathed it. I never wanted to deal with a reel. I would send in like really crappy recordings of old theater things, and I would get radio silence back. I was like, oh, I have to spend all this money on like the production of the reel, and oh my God. And in the end, I ended up picking 3 scenes, also really agonized over which scenes to do.
Sure.
Which is, I think, many actors' least favorite part about being an actor is like picking material for yourself. It sucks. But eventually did it. And what the managers that I met with, kind of the order of response was, yeah, Juilliard was in the subject line, so that caught them. Mm-hmm. But what it really was the opening of being born not here. Ooh, interesting, foreign, different. Then, yeah, experience. Let's watch the videos. The videos were good.
Great.
And then they reached out to me.
Right.
So even if I had never booked anything on film and television, but I knew that what I was sending was high quality.
Yeah.
And that felt really good to say,
Yeah.
to show them that.
Well, and that's where I think if there's one thing anyone takes away from this today, is that if you can show evidence that your work is good, your training and stuff kind of doesn't matter. Like, here's the evidence. I always say this is becoming an evidence-based business, where we say, let me see a self-tape before I even have you in for a real life audition, or like, let me see her do this character in a different role in a different film so that I can decide if I'm going to see her for this role, right? Like, if you can show the evidence that you can do it, then we're going to believe you in the work when you share the work.
And evidence does not have to be a co-star or a guest star or whatever. That does not need to be evidence. My evidence was that I had been hired consistently at a Shakespeare company. My evidence was that the New York Times saw a show that I was in and gave me a good review, which is pretty awesome. And then these tapes that I had a coach work on, and that's where the time and money should be invested in. And that felt really good too. I mean, you have said this a lot, Brian, that you want to feel like what you're sharing, you're excited about sharing. And I think that reads through.
And that's the bottom line. If you're excited about sharing it, like getting out of the head of like, it needs to look this way, right? The one thing that I also want to make sure, anyone who tried to write a story about how Mia has a review in the New York Times, I don't have that. Just pause for the cause. The review is all about her Shakespeare, just so we're real clear. It is not about the TV film queen that she's showing them that she can do. And if we're being very honest, Mia, I think that your Shakespeare credits are good, but not like, look at me at the public theater and doing Shakespeare in the park. No, it's not. And I'm saying that in a very humbling, like, your work is great kind of way. Yeah.
No, I grew up, God bless my mother. God bless my mother. I grew up with her being just this, not sneaky, that's the wrong word, being a really good editor and writer. She reminds me a lot of you, Brian. You would love each other. She's very good at taking the truth and making it really pretty. In other words, corndogging things. The term in Agent Goals, which if you sign on, you'll know. But it's basically taking something and adjusting the word order, the word choice, to make it seem a little bit more sparkly and a little bit more eye-catching. So, full transparency, my New York Times review was this. One sentence. It was, Mia Wergaft as Desdemona was particularly effective, period. That is it. It could be particularly effective in a bad way, in a good way, who knows? But that was enough that I can say I got a positive New York Times review.
Right.
And that clicks people's brains on, and they're like, wow.
Yes.
Nice.
And if I want to give a mini Corndog lesson, just because you said it so beautifully. So Corndog is not spin. Corndog is not taking truth and making fake news out of it. Corndog is truth and using words that are, like, I like to think of it as the wingman who is obsessed, or wing person who is obsessed with you, and the way they would describe you and the language they would use if they had a really great vocabulary, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so what you're saying is, like, the words New York Times are words we know, because New York Times, we understand what that is. So it lets us trust you more by dropping specifics in your career, which is what you did so beautifully.
Yeah, it's truly taking word order. It's making it, really good grammar, using good syntax, good rhetoric. It's, the things that you learn in English class. It's really basic writing skills that you, Brian, really help, and the whole community, when you're a part of this group, helps you kind of tweak and edit and adjust. It's truly just writing a good quote unquote essay/email. And
I'm gonna piggyback and say, I think it's one more thing where the steroids are added. The steroids are added, I think, where it makes it a little bit better than good writing is because you are so skilled as an actor in understanding dialogue, is that we are writing the way that we talk. We're not just writing the way that we write, which is and even using the punctuation to help us. And I think that is why people read through your dang email that's not 4 sentences long. It's a little bit longer. So if you were going to say, like, so thank you for making that distinction there. If you were going to say there's one specific part of Agent Goals that helped you the most, what would you say that would be?
I truly would say it was the amount of attention and worksheets and time given to figuring out who I am as an actor, because that I have taken with me past signing with a manager. My manager organized a meeting. It's called a general meeting, when you get to meet with a casting associate. So I got to meet with a casting associate at New York Theater Workshop, which was awesome. And we talked, and she goes, all right, tell me a little bit about you. And I said, blah, 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 this is what I'm doing. And she asked, what kind of roles do you see yourself in? And I was like, bam, 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 bam. And she goes, oh my God, that's so cool. Okay. Like, she was just so impressed with how easily I answered that question. I didn't flounder. I wasn't like, oh my God, I don't really know. Like, maybe.
Yeah.
Shit, I don't know. Like, it was just nice to feel relaxed and confident in my knowledge of what I could potentially play, could potentially bring. So that truly, after every call with any person in this industry, when I hang up, I go, thank you, Brian, because that has been such a stepping stone for me. I met with some really fancy schmancy agent at UTA right after I graduated college, as sort of not even to meet to represent. It was a friend of a friend, and it was just, I'll give you some advice. So I met with this guy, sweetest guy, but I came in not knowing anything about myself. And I just thought he would see right through me, see the talent, and just take me. No, he was like, you need to figure yourself out a bit. I was like, yeah, I think I do. And I was really crushed and, disheartened. I'm like, oh no, like, I'll never get an agent. I'll never get a manager. I don't know who I am. And this is something that takes time, takes experience, but also maybe someone to give you a little kick in the butt to tell you this is important and you should figure it out.
I love that. So it makes me so happy to hear you say that, Mia, because I think actually a lot of actors think when they're asked that question, they're going to have a really great answer. And it actually takes practice. And inside of the course, I make you practice it many times, because you're also, sure, maybe you'll have the language, but you're also going through all of the feelings through your body that are happening in that moment that are like, am I even inside of my body while I answer this question? And after the meeting, you go, what did I say? I think it was a good answer, right?
Was I here? Where was I?
Yes.
Like,
and that's what I think it needs to, that's why it has to be so prepared, not memorized, right? Not memorized, but in you, believing in, like, the language is.
You memorize lines for a play when you feel really good afterwards. It's not that you've memorized it, they're in your body. It's truly that. And then you're able to improvise, you're able to spin off of it. I really thought it was going to be really cheesy to like practice interviews with agents and managers. I was like, I don't need that. I'm better than that. I did it though. And it gave me another kick in the butt. I was like, okay, that was nerve-wracking and I need to do that again. So did it twice and it felt great. But yeah, I also recommend, maybe your first meeting is with someone that you're not so intimidated by, and, it's, slowly go into it and give yourself that time.
Yeah, I love the way I'm glad that this practice interview has humbled you a little, because
very much so. Yeah. Very much so.
Because I think what happens, and this is where I just want to make for our takeaway for everybody who's listening, is the reason why I focus on practicing is, and my wish is that you stay in character the entire time, is because you need to sit somewhere and have all those chemicals going around inside of your body that are saying, like, do I deserve to be in this room? And do I belong here? And what do I think about this person? And do I like what I wore today? And did I give the right answer? While you continue to answer questions and act like a human being. So I don't just say, throw yourself to the wolves and practice, but we prepare beforehand. So you can start to see, how do these words feel in my mouth when I say them out loud in front of someone else? So that, because what we don't want to happen, this is where something would really get screwy in me. I'm so glad this wasn't your experience, but we don't want you to get to the end of this process, take a bunch of meetings and go, I don't remember any of them because I wasn't even in the room. I don't even know. And then you can't make a decision about who's right for you. The last thing we want is you to be like, I'm kind of a dummy. I don't even know what I said. Like, that's the worst situation.
Yeah. I mean, and I know that I am someone who actually dissociates quite often under pressure. So I had to take notes. And it was interesting because the ones that I didn't take as many notes on were clearly the ones I wasn't that into. I was like, but then there were some that I really was not into and had to keep writing down notes. No, like there were a lot of moments where I felt pressured within myself to take a meeting with a manager because they had a high rating on IMDb, because they were really, talking me up. They were like, I'll get you here and I can promise you success. And I had to really trust my gut. That was very difficult, to trust my gut and say, I really didn't feel okay with this person. And that's fine. They're not for me. I need to trust that. So that was hard.
That's good. I'm really glad you say that, because a lot of people come to that position at the end of agent goals where they're wrestling with a few offers in front of them. And that's what a beautiful abundance problem, first of all.
I mean, no, yeah, that was the other thing. I was like, how lovely. I could just, have my pick. But it definitely was confusing, because my dad and I created like an Excel sheet where we gave each quality of an agent a numeric quantity. I don't know. We got really technical about it. In the end, it was really unnecessary. And it was, what was funny is we had this numeric quantity graph thing, and I kept asking him to adjust certain things so that my favorite would come to the top of the list. And he was like, Mia, why are we even doing this? Like, if you know your favorite, then just take the favorite. And I was like, but okay. So.
Oh my God, I love it. And it sounds like it's working out really well. You had this general meeting. I'm so happy.
Yes. I actually met my manager for the first time in person this weekend. I traveled to New York and we got to hug each other, and I got to hug her assistant, and it was really awesome.
Oh, God.
And I'm actually like she has another person that she signed in the pandemic, and she's like, it's just so crazy to not having not met you in person to now meet you in person. It was really great. It was really cool. And, we've had a lot of discussions about what these next 4 years will hold with Juilliard and where my priorities are. And I have had a lot of conversations with her where I'll get a little suspicious because I'm nervous about trusting someone with my career. And I'll say, so like, it's okay that I'm going to Juilliard, right? Like, you're not going to abandon me. She goes, Mia, like my Mia. She goes, my Mia, do not fret. Shh. Like, I believe in you. I think you're incredible. She is just so kind and honest and authentic. And I didn't think I could find a manager that really believed in my career as much as I did. That was really cool.
And I want to just point out that, like, we will, even though you've done this journey, you've done this work on yourself, our old stuff about managers and agents is going to creep up.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, if we never had parents, this never would have happened. But since we all had parents and we were raised by them very well, probably, or maybe not, well, who knows? But we bring our baggage to this relationship because we want them to believe in it. And I just want to say that you showed up so beautifully with putting yourself out there, that is why you were able to attract someone in that way. And also that you had such a beautiful start to this relationship that you can say, I'm freaking out over here and I think you're going to drop me, and she can put you to rest. You wouldn't have been able to have that place if the relationship started with I'm dreading the day that I don't book something for them because they're going to drop me. And that, like, if that was where it started, never would have been able to be that.
It was really important to me to have a relationship with a manager that wasn't all about the top layer of professionalism and the industry. And she happens to be quite astute, and she could tell that I was sort of holding something back in our couple of last meetings. She goes, okay, like, what's the hesitation? What's going on? Talk to me. And there was this wonderful moment of, okay, I'm going to be authentic and vulnerable and honest. If that turns her off, then it's a no. But it didn't. And I remember, talking to my parents about that, and they're like, wow, Mia, that took a lot of guts. It's scary to level with someone who feels as if they're miles above you. And that, there is that authority, there is that power dynamic. But if you can be real with them and say, listen, I'm hesitant to sign with you because of this, this, and this. What do you have to say to that? And they say this, this, and this. And you say, okay, let's go. It was a wonderful kind of moment for both of us where we really clicked into each other in intense honesty. And it was this sort of agreement of like, all right, like, let's go, like, blood agreement. We're on it. This is very intense moment. It was wonderful. We also had all these weird serendipitous things where, like, her son's name is Leo and I'm a Leo and my brother's name is Leo. And we're both Israeli Jews, and we both, do this and both do that. And there was just a lot of weird serendipitous things, which was also hard to trust.
Sure. Like, can I trust this? Am I allowed to? Because this is seeming kind of nice and easy and a little bit okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Am I allowed to be friendly? Like, am I allowed to be right?
so
Sure.
weird, but it worked. And I actually think that this was another huge thing in my meeting with this manager that I signed with. I had hesitance, and she also had hesitance, not because of me, but because she's someone who is not going to sign someone willy-nilly. We had 3 meetings together.
Yay. Please have 3 meetings with me so that you don't say yes and leave me in the lame pile for 2 years.
Yeah, and
Like,
it
I would rather have you be really astutely making a decision about working with me than I would rather have you say yes blindly.
exactly. And that's what really got me. I was like, whoa, you're being as careful about this decision as I am. You're not just like, oh my God, you're amazing. Sign a 1-year contract. Let's go. She was like, no, 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 no. I'm going to meet with you 3 times. I want you to send in tapes for me. I want to see that we're on, the same professional bar, that we can get along, that you can be honest with me. And we ended up signing a 3-year contract.
It's awesome. Awesome. So
yeah.
this and I want to make sure everyone doesn't hear this as, and I want to have one last question for you, Mia, but I want to make sure everyone hears, this is not a Cinderella magic wand story, because the heavy wand that Mia was lifting throughout this process is looking at herself, seeing what she was bringing into this journey, what she had to let go of bringing into it, and then getting a clear story of who she is so that she can show up the way that she wants to show up in this relationship. And I just want to be clear, because I think a lot of actors don't expect this. This was a longer process. She had 3 meetings, which means while she was taking these 3 meetings, undoubtedly, she was also balancing the yeses that might become nos from other people at the same time and saying, I don't have an answer for you yet. So a lot of times I think actors think like, once I get the meeting, then it's all gonna work out. I actually really want to devote energy and save energy for when I'm in meeting mode, so that I can still show up full and be really smart about making a decision. So when you think about reaching out to reps, just be sure that you get the one of the things we talk about in every single lesson of Agent Goals is self-care. Because the crappy thing would be if Mia were to show up in these meetings and be like, oh wait, I did all this stuff and now I have to show up to meetings. We have to be able to be ready for that. And so I just want to make sure if anyone's thinking about representation, that we kind of give ourselves the gift of, oh, and then I get to go to these meetings, and how do I want to be there? So that said, there are probably a lot of actors right now who are where you were at the beginning of this whole process. And if you could, what would you just say to them in terms of, well, I'll leave it there. What would you say to them?
Kind of what you were saying before, I want to make it very clear that it was a difficult process. It was hard, and it was a lot of thinking. It was a lot of brain space. It wasn't, a lot of hard writing, but it's a lot of brain space. You are talking about your career. This is really overwhelming stuff. There were many crying fits had. There were many long hours in front of the computer just staring at scenes on YouTube and being like, no, oh my God, I'm never going to find a scene. Oh my God. It's a toll on the brain. So what I would say to someone who is potentially in the position I was in at the beginning of this is that, God, I'm trying to think of something that is actually useful and not just like a cliche phrase.
Well, if I'm sure you can even think of a friend of yours who might be.
Yeah, I would say like, don't give up. Just just do it step by step, bird by bird, but to truly not give up, because it gets really hard and you want to give up many times. You're like, oh, I'll just do it a different way, or I just won't have an agent and manager and I'll be fine on my own. Which you probably would be fine on your own. You'd be just fine. Just because you get an agent and manager does not mean you will all of a sudden. I definitely had that preconceived notion in my head. I was like, I'll get a manager and then I will work for the rest of my days and it'll be fine. No, that is not the case. So I would say, though, if you need a break, take a break, but just come back to it. Keep going. Just keep going. Keep going.
Yes. And I think what I'm hearing is you're specifically speaking to someone who may have signed up for Agent Goals. I kind of see what you're saying, right? And so I just want to make sure, for those of you, I want to talk just a little more broader. Yes, anyone who's just thinking about representation.
I would then say, I would say to them, to time spent on figuring out what you want to do with your career is not time wasted. So if you are, binge watching TV and you feel gross about it, no, you do not have to feel gross about it. This can be research. It can be enjoyable and fruitful, and it's all, fodder for the fire. It's all helpful. So take time and invest time in just figuring out what makes you, what makes you happy, what kind of plays, what kind of roles, what kind of movies you would just die to be in, and write those down. Write it all down. That's
Right.
what I would.
Beautiful start. It's a beautiful start. I want to thank you so much for sharing this with us, Mia.
Thank you.
It means a lot to hear. And also, it means a lot to hear actually the nitty gritty of some of your journey, because some of it I got to see and some of it is off you on your own doing it, right?
Yeah.
So I just really appreciate getting to hear those parts. I think that your success is so well deserved. And one of the things that I hear inside of it is, the work that you put in attracts at a certain level. And so even as you're just saying, like, well, this part was, took up a lot of brain space in this moment, I was staring in front of my computer, like that work paid off and that it attracted what you actually wanted because you were sitting with it. And I just really appreciate you giving that story to it. I am sure there are going to be people here who would like to be able to follow you in the rest of your journey. Is there anywhere that they can follow you or look for you?
Oh my God, yes, I guess. On Instagram, I suppose, which is my name. It's just Mia at Mia Wergaft. Yeah, so that's that. And yes, and we start school in the fall, and we'll see what happens.
Yes, and we will be watching you on TV once
Hopefully, we'll see who knows.
and we will link to your Instagram, of course, in the show notes if people want to follow along on your journey.
Sure.
And I just want to thank you again for saying yes to reaching out to representation in a new way, and your willingness to look at yourself as part of the journey and not make it only about what's outside of you. And I also just want to say that there's some secret joy inside of me that your family was a part of this. That also gives
Huge part.
I just love that so much. I just love it so
Yeah,
much.
they are always not far behind.
All right, we'll have a beautiful time at Juilliard, and we will stay in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.